MotoGP is a lot of things. It's fast, fun, exciting, occasionally hilarious, but one thing that it certainly isn't is predictable. Once the riders are out on the track, literally anything can happen. There's no telling how a race will go, who will win, who will even cross the finish line. Most of the time, we get a relatively expected winner. After all, to those of us who follow the sport, a race isn't an isolated event. There's an entire weekend leading up to when the grid lines up on Sunday where we can get an idea of who's competitive and who's not. And if you follow every weekend across a whole season, you have a relatively good idea of who can realistically win a race. Fortunately for us, MotoGP isn't always bound by reality. Even this year, we've had shocking wins, from Zarco's dance through dreary conditions in Le Mans to Raul Fernandez and Fermin Aldeguer's dominant performances in Australia and Indonesia respectively. However, they are far from unique in Grand Prix motorcycle racing history. My name is B, this is the Beehive Paddock, and today I want to take you through some of my favorite wins that weren't supposed to happen in motorcycle Grand Prix racing. I am also planning on doing an end of season awards show to highlight some of the best riders, races, and moments of this season. If you would like to be a part of this by voting, go fill out the Google form in the description or in the pinned comment. One last thing before we get started, I'm not covering any races that I've talked about in depth on this channel already, so no Chan On Chu 2018, Troy Bayliss 2006, or Alan Carter 1983, among others, despite the fact that those are great races. Without further ado, let's get into the video. I love lying. I'm immediately breaking my no repeats rule by talking about a race I've talked before. However, in my defense, I didn't really go that deep into this one, and also it was on one of my least viewed videos of all time. So if you've somehow seen this before, thank you, and I'm sorry. This story takes us back to 1998, one of the most heated 250cc title battles of all time. Mostly because of how it would end. That's a different story though, as this race took place long before that beef had finished cooking. Near the start of the season at the 1998 Italian Grand Prix, Aprilia were the undisputed kings of the intermediate class during this season, with three of the best 250cc riders basically forming three one-man factory squads. For the Italian Grand Prix, Aprilia had also brought their test rider Marcellino Lucchi to perform a wildcard. Lucchi is a strange case. He made his debut in the World Championship all the way back in 1982 and raced almost every year, but never as a full-time rider. Only in 1990 and 1991 for Aprilia, who kept him on as a test rider, where he would make wildcard appearances in which he performed well. In fact, he had been on the podium at the Italian Grand Prix with them 3 times in a row. By 1998 though, he was 41, working full-time as a garbage truck driver, and with Aprilia's powerhouse lineup, it would be a tall task for anyone to get a win. Despite this, he would beat all the factory Aprilias off the line, leading into the first corner ahead of Valentino Rossi and Loris Capirossi, with Tetsuya Harada stalled on the line and being hit from behind, causing some damage to his bike. Rossi soon got into the lead and began to pull away though, and Lucchi realized he had chosen the wrong tires. His pace was fading fast as Capirossi approached. Right on cue, as if a gift from the racing gods, Rossi was slowing down with his hand raised. Not a technical problem, but the rain had begun to fall, and according to the rules, the race was halted. Lucchi had been saved by the bell, and as the shower passed by, he changed his tires to the correct compound. Harada had his bike repaired, and the race was restarted under dry conditions. In 1998, a red-flagged race was not simply decided by the second session as it is today. Instead, the times from the two sessions were added together in a process called aggregate timing. These aggregate times were then used to figure out who would actually win the race, with the lowest combined total rider winning the race even if they weren't first across the line in either session. Tetsuya Harada had finished the first session 8 seconds behind the leaders after his starting incident, and he knew he needed to pull out something special. Sure enough, he did, as he streaked away from the rest of the pack off the line, excluding one man, Marcellino Lucchi. Harada led the second session from lights to flag, but Lucchi came in right behind him to take the win on the timesheets. Aprilia was overjoyed, and the 41-year-old, despite being happy, recognized how lucky he had been that the rain came when it had. From a race where Rossi was beaten by an underdog to a race where he was the underdog. It's pretty odd to ever consider Valentino Rossi an underdog, to be honest with you. I mean, he's so much larger than life that it seems impossible for him to ever have been at a disadvantage. However, there was a point where everyone thought he had gone too far, and taken a step he couldn't recover from. This was, of course, in 2004, when Rossi made the decision to leave Honda, who had been the powerhouse of the Premier class for a decade, for Yamaha, who were struggling massively to get their 4-stroke YZR M1 project off the ground. In some cases, literally. And despite Rossi being viewed as one of the all-time greats after wrapping up his 5th world title in 2003, people had serious doubts he would be able to even win races on the Yamaha, much less a world title. However, the bike Rossi showed up with for the opening round of 2004 was not the YZR M1 of 2003. Many were expecting Rossi and his genius crew chief Jeremy Burgess to adapt to the bike over the course of the 2004 season. In reality, it took them 3 days. Thanks to Rossi's ability to explain exactly what was happening under him on the track, Burgess's incredible technical problem-solving ability, and the new Big Bang engine courtesy of Masao Furusawa, by the end of the opening preseason test, the YZR-M1 was already looking much better. The opening race of the season was held at the Fakisa Freeway in South Africa, and after hearing for months about how he wouldn't be able to do anything now that he was on a new bike, Rossi sure did have a chip on his shoulder. He didn't waste any time, leading every practice session and then breaking his own lap record by half a second to qualify on pole. Finally, it was Sunday. Rossi lined up ahead of two Hondas, piloted by Sete Gibernau and Max Biaggi, two of his biggest rivals at the time. Biaggi himself was the last rider to win a race on a Yamaha, over a year ago at the 2002 Malaysian Grand Prix. Off the line, it was Rossi who took the whole shot. What followed was a spectacular duel between Rossi and Biaggi, the two rivals trading blows all throughout the race. Fundamentally, this was a different Valentino Rossi than the one who had been on the RC211V just months earlier. There was no easy domination, no easy laps, and no such thing as half effort. He was riding at 100% for the full race. Even when Biaggi would power past Rossi on the straight, Rossi was glued to Biaggi's back tire. With 3 laps to go, Biaggi left the smallest of gaps, but it was enough. Rossi lunged and pushed both of them wide, but he made the move clean. On the limit, Rossi was able to build a small gap, but it was enough to hold Biaggi off. And as Rossi crossed the line, he won the race and became the first person in history to win 2 Premier Class races in a row on different bikes. After a handshake from Biaggi, Rossi parked the bike, got off, and sat down. The commentators thought he was crying. Later, he would reveal he was laughing too hard to ride. He would go on to say, "I think that was the best race of my career. I can't believe I won. A race like that was a miracle." A miracle he thanked the bike for with a kiss on the front fairing. When Rossi won that race in 2004, Yamaha hadn't had a win in well over a year. By 2007, Suzuki was in a near 7-year-long winning drought. Once one of the most successful manufacturers in history, the 4-stroke era had not been kind to Suzuki. With John Hopkins and Chris Vermeulen on the team, they arrived at round 5 of the series on a high, as Hopkins had managed a podium finish in China the previous time out. Hopkins qualified very well, 5th on the grid. Vermeulen didn't do as well, heading up the 4th row in 12th. The start of the race was burdened by cloudy skies holding water back, and a drying but not fully dry track. The race was declared wet so riders could swap bikes if need be, or if the rain came in. The early portion of the race saw most of the pack stuck together in a big group in tricky condition. With rain coming in, some riders gambled on changing to wet tires early, only for their tires to wear out too fast, while others braved the conditions until 19 laps remained. With a light drizzle, the home heroes used their home field advantage, as Sylvain Guintoli and Randy Depunier would take the lead and begin to break away. Meanwhile, Hopkins was making progress, passing rider after rider until only Depunier was ahead of him. Riders were beginning to fall, and both Guintoli and Depunier fell victim to the wet track. The French fans would have to wait almost another 20 years to see their first home winner since 1954. And John Hopkins on the Suzuki was out at the front of the race. Tire warmers came off the bikes as the first big group of riders took to the pits, including Chris Vermeulen on the other Suzuki. He was able to make it to the front of the exit group as Hopkins continued to hold the lead, but the slick tires were now considerably slower than the wets, with the vast majority of riders choosing to swap bikes the next time around, led by John Hopkins and Marco Melandri. Hopkins and Melandri would make it out of the pits ahead of Vermeulen, but their bikes had been sitting for a full lap with no tire warmers, and Vermeulen already had a lap to break his in, and within the lap, it was Vermeulen in the lead. Melandri would put a lot of pressure on the Australian rider over the next 10 laps, as the two broke away from everyone behind them, but even he faded away as the rain grew heavier and the race drew nearer to a close. Vermeulen was alone, and as the Suzuki team watched with bated breath, Vermeulen rode through the spray around the looping Le Mans circuit and brought his first win and Suzuki's first win of the 4-stroke era home with a wheelie that should never be done in the conditions that they were in. Suzuki had a winner for the first time in over 6 years. In a way, it was fitting that Vermeulen had won the race that day. Suzuki's first ever 500cc winner was Australian rider Jack Finlay, who had passed away just the day before Vermeulen's win. I can't think of a more fitting tribute. Sometimes a surprising win comes from a rider who no one expected to be up front. Sometimes an unexpected win comes from a bike that was never supposed to be up front. Much more rarely do fans get to see a star come onto the scene all at once. But in 1997, that's exactly what the fans at Suzuka got to witness. Japan has always been notable for having wildcard riders at their races. Riders from the Japanese National Series testing their mettle at the Suzuka Grand Prix was nothing new. In 1997, HRC called one of their All-Japan road race talents for a wildcard in the 250cc class. Yes, Daijiro Kato. Kato made it onto the front row alongside Aprilia's factory riders Tetsuya Hirata and Loris Capirossi, and another hometown rider, privateer Honda pilot Takeshi Sugimura. It was a brilliant race among the leaders, with riders chopping and changing in a 5-rider lead group that consisted of Sugimura, Kato, Hirata, Ralph Waldman, and Toru Ukawa. Capirossi had apparently suffered a loss of power early on and wasn't able to catch up to the leaders. That's weird. Hope that doesn't keep happening. Kato held his own up front though, proving he could scrap with the best in the world if given the opportunity. But with a few laps to go, Hirata showed why he was a factory rider. He began to stretch a gap, as much as 1.7 seconds with 2 laps to go, before he appeared to throw it away, allowing Kato and Ukawa to catch back up. Hirata would later go on to explain that he suffered the same power failure issue as Capirossi, something which would end up plaguing the Aprilia all through the 97 season. And the 3 Japanese riders went into the final chicane 3 wide. Ukawa appeared to have got the move done, but he went just a little too wide, and Kato, taking the line through the middle of the other 2, was able to get the drive to beat Ukawa while pushing Hirata to the outside, securing a stunning home win. After the race, he said, "I just wanted to finish. It happened that I won." Kato would go on to win the All Japan 250 title that year, and would unsuccessfully try to defend it in 1998. However, he was yet again given the opportunity to wildcard at his home race. This time, he qualified on pole aboard the Castrol Honda, and he would yet again be a part of the battle at the sharp end. Ukawa would lead the race ahead of Kato at the start, but soon Kato repassed him, leaving Ukawa to play catch-up while the other 2 wildcards battled for podium position, Shinya Nakano and Naoki Matsuda. Ukawa's Aprilia would ultimately suffer another power loss which took him off the podium, and on the final lap, Kato led into the chicane just barely ahead of his rivals. But the fighting ultimately meant Kato was the only one with good drive out of the corner, and he took the win ahead of Nakano and Matsuda, a podium that consisted entirely of Japanese wildcards. Absolutely incredible. So far, we've been discussing unexpected wins. However, it's kind of difficult to say that those wins shouldn't have happened. After all, what does that even mean? Nothing should or shouldn't happen, it's just what happens, right? Well, sort of. If you go by the rules of sport and probability, then anything can happen. However, if you go by the rules of your team, sometimes there are actual races that you weren't supposed to win. In the 2005 Qatar Grand Prix, Gabor Talmashi was explicitly told he was not supposed to win the race. Talmashi had a breakthrough year in 2005 after joining the Red Bull KTM IO 125 squad. However, it was teammate Mika Kallio who truly had a title contending year. With 4 rounds remaining on the calendar, Thomas Luthi was leading the title chase with 189 points ahead of Kallio with 181. Talmashi was still in mathematical contention, 58 points behind Luthi, but with 4 rounds left, it was a tall order to come back. He was told by his team that Kallio's title chances were to take priority over his, and that he should focus on supporting Kallio in the upcoming races. Kallio made it clear heading into Qatar his plan was to get away on the first lap and hold a lead, which he did, but he took Talmashi with him. Talmashi was content to sit behind his teammate, far beyond the rest of the grid, for the entire race. It must have seemed to everyone that the plan was going perfectly. Kallio led the whole way, and even when Talmashi had the slipstream, he would stay behind him. Out of the final corner of the race, it was still Kallio in the lead. But just as the cameras cut back from watching battles further back in the pack, Talmashi pulls out of the slipstream, ahead of Kallio, and crosses the line just ahead of his teammate. The cameras cut to the IO team, and this is so funny. Look at their faces. They have no idea what's going on. Just smiling in disbelief. The plan had gone perfectly until the last moment. Talmashi claimed he had thought there was another lap to run, that the timing tower at the track allegedly had the wrong lap count. But by the time he saw the checkered flag, it was too late. But this was not good enough for the team, and a contract offer to ride a 250cc machine for the team was taken off the table. Kallio called it a stupid move and claimed he hadn't pushed because he knew Talmashi would finish in second. Believe it or not, it gets even worse for Kallio, as eventually he lost the title to Luthi by just 5 points. If he had won this race, they would have been tied in the points, and Kallio would have had 5 wins to Luthi's 4, meaning he would have won the world title on count back. And there you have it. Those are 5, technically 6, races that riders weren't really supposed to win. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and a special thank you to my channel members: MBP2112, Venturian CRO, Sean, Moto Sapien, B, Jack the World's Fastest Maori, Drew Gibbs, Really Very Bored 1, Carl Ruppersberg, Friday 42, Troy the Boy, Money Penny, Luis Campos, ASX91, and Ian Ellison. One final thank you for watching to everyone out there, and have a fantastic day.